Okay, welcome. And we are back to Duties of the Heart, and we are in the Shara Bitochon, the gate of trust in God. And we're in chapter 6. And for those of you who are using the Sefaria, it's in the chat, and we're on section the link is there, and we're section 12. I got it wrong the first time. Not section 6, section 12. And for those of you who are using this edition, either in the full size or the cute edition, we are on page 460 or 461, depending upon your Hebrew or English. So let me give you a little bit of a recap. So he's talking about the obstacles to trusting in God, and the one that he takes the most umbrage to is what he calls the pledge mentality or the security mentality. And this is the case where a person takes a pledge from God or collateral from God in exchange for service. So a person who says, look, God, I'm very happy to serve you, but I just have to have the means first. So first you have to give me, you have to give me a nice house, and you have to give me, a nice family, and you have to give me my health, and you have to, make sure that I have a very nice library of books to study, and you have to make sure that I have all of these things in place. And once I have all those things in place, well, then I'm going to be able to serve you. And as he's already pointed out, there are many, many problems with this, aside from the philosophical problem, and that is that you already owe, so to speak, to the person who you're treating as your borrower, right? You already owe them. So requiring further collateral, right, when you already owe them, is problematic. And just the whole idea of you're supposed to be grateful, and there's no end to it, right? We know that, practically speaking, with human beings, that there's really no end to this. There's really no end to this process. Hold on one second. Just see if yeah, I did. Okay. There's really no end to this process, because what's going to happen is I'm going to keep asking for more things. And so the conditions are going to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so that kind of conditional quid pro quo relationship with God he's not a fan of it at all. And he sees this as being one of the biggest obstacles. And as I said last week, my first reaction is to think, this is not me, right? I think one of the things I've noticed recently about myself is that when I read things which are negative, one of my first thoughts is to think it's not me. And then my second thought is to think, oh yeah, maybe it is kind of me. And this is a good example of that. I thought to myself, again, it's not me. I'm not really like that. But I think maybe in some ways, I have made this. I think I kind of have made this mistake in the past. So I'm not gonna. I think it's much more common than we think, and much more unconscious than we think. It comes as part of our kind of putting off things, right? And so we don't think of it as a quid pro quo, but in the process of putting things off, what we're saying is, well, once this happens, I'll do this. And of course, that happening, those circumstances depend on whether God makes it happen or not. So in essence, we're using this kind of mentality. Okay. So now he talks about why when a human being takes a pledge, when a human being takes collateral, they usually do it for three reasons. One, lest the fellow become impoverished and is unable to repay him, right? So if the person is poor, right, the person loses the money you lend them, right? You always have that Rolex watch, right? And you can just sell the Rolex watch and you have the money that you lent them. 2, lest he be tight-fisted with what he has, making it impossible to collect from him, right? Maybe the person is going to be difficult to collect from, and you're not going to be able to collect the money. So you could say, well, at least I have that Rolex watch, and I can always sell that. Or out of fear that his fellow may die or disappear, right? If the guy dies or he runs off on you, no problem. You've got that Rolex watch. So now these 3 concerns are totally inapplicable to the Creator may he be exalted, right? Because we know, 1, that we don't have to worry about him becoming impoverished. He always has plenty. He's not tight-fisted. He's generous. And we don't have to worry about him dying or disappearing because he's eternal and he's always present. So the pledge is a cure for these ills in human relationships, but if people were safe from these 3 risks in their relationships with others, it would undoubtedly be shameful for them to demand a pledge. If we knew that none of these things could happen, then we would not ask for somebody, would not ask for collateral from somebody, right? We only ask for collateral because of those issues. But if there were no such issues, we would not ask for collateral. So now these 3 concerns are totally inapplicable to the Creator may be exalted. It is so much more shameful and absurd to demand a pledge from him, right? It makes absolutely no sense, right? Since none of those conditions exist. So the scripture says, mine is the silver and mine is the gold, riches and honor come from you, right? Since anything that you might want is ultimately going to come from God anyway, it makes no practical sense to think this way. So now he says, one who takes a pledge from his fellow will feel secure with it, since he expects to collect from it and benefit either directly from it or from its exchange value. But as to who he thinks that he will be secure from all worldly, but as to he who thinks that he will be secure from all worldly concerns, if the Creator provides him in advance all his needs, his argument is a false one.
No, you can leave it on.
Oh.
Unless you're going to sleep. Okay.
Okay, I'm not sure who I'm muting there. So he says, one who takes pledge from his fellow will feel secure with it, since he expects to collect from it and benefit either directly from it or from its exchange value, right? You're either gonna use that Rolex or you're gonna sell it for money. But as to he who thinks that he will be secure from all worldly concerns if the Creator provides him in advance with all his needs, his argument is false, for he cannot be sure of holding on to his money, as disaster may strike him and separate it from him. As it says in Scripture, at a young age, it will leave him. We don't, right? There's nothing about this world which we can predict. Okay, that's not the way the world is. That's not the way the world is created. And so, even if up front we said, "Okay, listen, God, I'm going to serve you. I'm going to be your servant. I just need these things. Okay, I need my Olympic-sized swimming pool, and I need my walk-in. I need my walk-in freezer, and I need all of these things. Okay, please." And He provides all these things. There's nothing that's going to guarantee, and my health. Okay, I have to have perfect health. There's nothing that's going to guarantee that those things are going to last, right? Because nothing in this world, we live in the world of entropy. That's the way it works. Everything is breaking down all the time. So the freezer, the walk-in freezer is going to break, and your kidneys are going to fail, and everything. You never know what's going to happen. So it's not like the Rolex watch, you're just going to stick the Rolex watch on and there you go, right? It's all set. But it's not like that, because you never know what's going to happen. And it doesn't come, Rolex watches probably come with a lifetime guarantee, but most things in the world don't come with lifetime guarantees, including your kidneys. So furthermore, his argument that he will attain peace of mind by achieving what he desires of material wealth is a lie. That's I have to look at the Hebrew for a second. Right, it's okay. it's stupidity, um, and betrays ignorance of what he wishes to attain. For on the contrary, be a major cause of worry and anxiety, as our masters of blessed memory said. This one of the great things. Marbet Nechasim Marba Daga says that the more possessions, the more worry. Right? You think that you're going to get all this. You think that if you get all this stuff, you're going to be, oh, okay, now I'm going to be calm. But once you have more stuff, then you start worrying about the stuff, right? So you have a car collection, then you have to house the car collection. You have to worry about the place where you collect the cars. You have to worry about who's going to take care of the cars. You have to worry about the grading of the cars. You have to make sure that they get properly, they get properly cared for, and that they get polished properly, and that dust doesn't settle on them, they don't rust, and you have to, you start having to worry about all these things. And I'm not experiencing that with my book collection. My books are currently en route from California, right? And I collected books for a very long time. And now I have to deal with it, right? I have to deal with all these books, 77 boxes of books. And that was after slimming it down a little bit. So it's, like, I don't what am I gonna do with I don't know. In any case, it seemed like a great idea then, but now I have to deal with it. That's what happens when you get a lot of stuff. Okay. So one who takes a pledge from his fellow, if he had been certain that his fellow would pay him back earlier than agreed upon, and would out of sheer kindness reward him for waiting for his money with twice the sum that was owed him, then he would never have taken a pledge from him. Okay, so if you know, okay, if you're expecting you want to do something for somebody, and you know that they're going to pay you back much more than they could ever give you in collateral, right? And you know that they're going to pay you back. They're going to pay you back twice as much just out of the goodness of their heart. Then there's no way that you would ask them for collateral, right? So as the Creator may be exalted, whose benevolence and great favor, present and past, are known to us, who is known to requite acts of charity and obedience with reward that cannot be imagined, let alone described. And he quotes a beautiful line in Yeshayahu, in the book of Isaiah. Oh God, beside yours, it says, beside yours, I'm sorry, no eye has seen it, oh God, beside yours, what God has prepared for those that wait for him, right? That we can't even imagine the rewards that await for a person in the world to come. And it's much more of a disgrace to demand a pledge from him. We know if we understand that God is going to reward us in ways that we can't even imagine, then asking him for a stupid Rolex watch, right? If the guy is going to give us all of his, is going to give us huge treasure chests and storehouses, and that's the story. There's a midrash that Moses goes into the world to come, and he sees all of these storehouses, right? And one of them is gigantic. It's huge. It's bigger than all the others combined. And he says, "What's that?" And he said, and they tell him that's the Otsar Matnat Chinam. That's the treasury of unearned gifts. That's the treasury of unearned gifts. That's where God just gives grace and favor to people, even to people who don't deserve it. So knowing that the Otsar Matnat Chinam, that the treasury of unearned gifts is waiting for us, then why are we sitting here asking for the Rolex watch? Why are we sitting here asking for a little tiny bit of collateral when we know that we're going to get paid back much more than we ever lent? So, number 7, he who makes a pledge from his fellow does so only if he is able to supply the latter with the goods for which he takes the pledge of security. Right. So if I'm making a pledge on security, taking a pledge, I'm taking that Rolex watch, I don't know why I chose a Rolex watch. I have no clue. Okay, I'm taking that Rolex watch. And I better have, and I'm saying I'm taking the Rolex watch for now, and I'm gonna pay you, later. Well, I better really be able to pay you later. I have to really be able to pay you later. So if I'm saying to God, listen, I'm gonna serve you, later. Okay, if you take care of me now. So you provide me with my Olympic-sized swimming pool, and you provide me with my beautiful library, and you provide me with my beautiful wife, and you provide me with my perfect health. And once you do that, right? Once you do that, I'm going to serve you. Well, that works really well if you know you're going to be able to deliver. But doesn't really work that way. But the one who demands a pledge from the Creator may be exalted in the form of advance favors, is unable to render the service that is due for them. He is not even certain he'd be able to pay his old debt, much less the new ones. Right? How do we know? Right? Think about the debt that we owe our Creator. Right? The debt that we owe our Creator. Right? From the moment, for every single breath, from the moment we were born, for every electron in our body that stays in its orbit, for the function of every cell at every moment, right? For all of that, we're obligated to gratitude. And the idea that we're going to be able to pay that back in any way, right, is virtually impossible. So it says, for the righteous man can meet his obligation to God for his goodness to him only by means of the help that God's extend to him, as one of the pious said in his phrases. And once again, this is whenever he says one of the pious said in his phrases, that usually means he's quoting a kind of a Sufi text. Even the intelligent person who knows you does not glory in his own accomplishment, but in your name and your mercy, for you have prepared his heart to know you. For though you will, all the senses shall be found worthy, and in you all they glory, saying, "Oh, okay." And then he quotes, "To him we glory in God continually and give thanks to your name forever." Bottom line is, everything that you're going to give God, God gave you. So you're, no matter what. So you're saying to God, okay, you give me everything I need. But you give me everything I need to be able to serve you, and then I'm going to serve you with everything that you already gave me. So really, this entire transaction, right? This entire transaction, we've made it a transaction, right? Which it shouldn't have been in the first place. But now this entire transactional relationship that we have with God, it's all being financed, so to speak, by God. The entire thing, from beginning to end. So there's no reason to play this game, with it. So that's what he has to say about this, on this idea of the pledge mentality. He has a very big problem with this kind of transactional relationship with God, where you say, okay, if you just do this for me, I'm going to do this for you. Okay. So now we're heading into the home stretch in I think it's the last chapter of the Sha'ar HaBitachon. He says, since we have completed the exposition of what belongs to this gate according to our understanding, it is now fitting to explain the things that are detrimental to trust in God. Now, he actually already began that, right? It's interesting. He began chapter 6 by saying, before I talk about the things generally which are detrimental to the trust in God, I'm going to start with this one thing, which I think is the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst. Now he's having done that, right? Having talked to us about the worst thing, which is this transactional relationship with God, where you expect him to provide you with all this stuff, and then you're going to serve him. Now he goes back and talks about other things which are detrimental. So He says, okay, it's now fitting to explain the things detrimental. So I say that all the things mentioned as detrimental in the three preceding gates of this book are detrimental to trust as well. So he's say all the things. So if you remember, right, when he talked about the unity of God, right, when he talked about serving God, all these things, he says, and anything that we said was detrimental before is detrimental here also. Also detrimental is ignorance of the Creator and his good attributes. For whatever fails to appreciate the Creator's compassion for his creatures, his protection of them, his providence, dominion, control over them, will not be confident in him and will not rely on him. So the first thing is you have to know who God is. Right? You have to know who God is. You have to know about his Rachmei Borei. You have to know about his compassion. You have to know about his midotav, about his qualities, about his goodness. And there's no way that you're not going to rely on him if you don't understand his power and generosity. So we have to understand the generosity and power of God, and in order to want to rely on him. So another thing that is detrimental is ignorance of the Creator's command. All right, it's sichluto b'mitzvat habarei barach, to understand the command, his Torah, in which he charged us to rely on him and to trust in him, as it says, "Prove me now in this, trust in God forever and ever." That's from Yeshayahu, from Isaiah. Right? To understand that this is not just a good idea and a spiritual nicety, but this is a mitzvah. This is a commandment, right? This is a commandment, and it's also something, we say that a mitzvah. There are two ways of understanding it. One is as from the verb tzav, which means to command, but also from the word safta, which means a kind of connection. It's the Zohar. So it's also a connection to Hashem. So this is one of the main ways that we connect to Hashem is through this practical trusting, right? So if we think, we think there's a commandment to pray, we think there's a commandment to watch what we eat, we think there's a commandment, to fast, or we think this is also commanded, right? To have, for Muslim friends, tawakkul, right? There's also it's not just a nice idea, but it's something that's expected of us. It's an expectation, divine expectation, that we'll have trust in God. Okay, another harmful thing is becoming enamored with the immediate causes which one can see without realizing the closer a cause is to the effect, the less its power to help or harm the one affected by it. While the more remote it is, the greater more manifests its power to help or harm him. Okay, so here's the deal. Okay, so imagine you have, I love my favorite example is the man, the stick, and the dog. Okay. Never hit a dog, by the way. So you have the man, right? And he's hitting the dog with a stick, God forbid, right? What does the dog do? The dog bites the end of the stick. Okay. The dog bites the end of the stick. Now, that end of the stick is the least of that dog's problems. Okay. The end of the stick cannot do anything for the dog. Okay, the end of the stick didn't do anything for the dog. It cannot do anything for the dog. If the dog could talk to the end of the stick, that there would be no point, because it is just an intermediate cause. Okay, it's just an intermediate cause. And if we could go further and further and further and further, so if we had a dog that was being hit with a ball that was hit by a stick, and we could do an entire Chad Gadya here, right? We could do a whole song about this, right? As we get further and further and further away from the original cause, the less and less it really has to do with the less and less impact it really has on us, right? So it's the person that's having the impact. It's not the ball that's being hit by the stick and it's not the stick, right? It's the person who's hitting. So we understand that. Okay, so by analogy, a king who wants to punish one of his servants gives an order to his deputy. The deputy orders a commander. The commander orders an officer. The officer orders a sergeant. The sergeant orders a policeman. And the policemen carry out the act with instruments reserved for this purpose. Okay, that sounds pretty, I can't even, instruments reserved for this purpose, right? Got with a stick or whatever it is. The instruments have the least power either to mitigate or to aggravate the suffering of the servant because they have no will of their own. The policemen have more power than the instruments, the sergeant more than the policeman more than the officer, says the officer more than the sergeant, the commander more than the officer, the deputy more than the commander, the king more than the power of them all. For if he pleases, he can pardon him. So the immediate cause, right? The immediate cause, the stick being wielded for the policeman, is very far away, right? It's very far away. So he says here, what happens is a person becomes enamored, a person becomes fascinated by and entrenched in all the things which mediate between God's generosity and their reception. And all of those things, that they get bedazzled by all of those things. Oh, hold on, there's somebody coming in. Okay. They get bedazzled by all of those things, and they think, well, they become fascinated by those, and they start to attribute to them powers that they really don't have. Right? Because the power really, in this case, right, this story we just told, the power comes from the king. And the only person who can really change anything in this story is the king, who is the last person that they might think about. They may fixate on the stick. They may fixate on the policeman. They may fixate on the commander. They may fixate on the sergeant. They may fixate on the deputy. But at the end of the day, the only person who can do anything about anything is the king. So you see, causes are weaker or stronger in helping one affected by them in proportion to their closeness to him or remoteness from him. Since the created may be exalted as the final cause, infinitely remote from those affected. I love what he says. Hu tachlid ha'elot birochak. Like as far away as you could possibly be, right? As transcendent as you could possibly be compared to anything else, right? As transcendent as you could possibly be. Okay, since the created being exalted is the final cause, infinitely remote from those affected, it's proper to trust in him, rely on him, because of his great power to help or harm, as we have explained. Right? So since he's the first cause, he's the ultimate cause, that we should depend on the ultimate cause rather than on all the intermediate causes. Instead of, right, we should depend on the king, not on the deputy, not on the policeman, not on any of that, none of any of that. The principle of the matter in regard to trust of God is this: the more one knows God and has faith in his protective care and abounding providence, the more trust one has in him. It's as simple as that, right? The more you know, kafi yitron yidiatam oto. The more you know him, the more you have faith in his in his control of the world, in his providence over the world. It says the more you're going to be able to trust in him. So part of what we need to do is really to meditate deeply, on God's hashgacha, God's control of the world, on God's providence, to be able to trust him, to know that he's in control, which is not always easy because the world is very chaotic, right? It's not always easy to see God's hashgacha, to see God's providence in a world which sometimes is very chaotic and very disappointing. So now he says, according to a child, at the beginning of his life in his mother's breast. It says in Tehillim from the book of Psalms. Actually, we already read this one. You made me secure at my mother's breast. When his perception grows stronger, he transfers his trust to his mother because of the attention she lavishes on him, as it says, which is really interesting. I guess he sees this as a description of the experience of the baby. Right? He's trying to talk about the kind of growth of our trust in God. So first, right, you become the child. It's interesting. I don't know whether it's true, but the child sort of sees the mother as the breast, right? I mean, that's how he's describing this. He thinks, that the child sees the mother as the breast, right? This is my
Your Winnicott.
what?
There's a child psychologist, Winnicott, and that's exactly what he says, that he talks about the total identification of the infant with the breast. And it's only when the child develops a sense of self that he sees the mother as other.
Oh, well, that is exactly what's said here. That's exactly
Winnicott.
okay. I'll check that out. That's exactly what he says here. He says, so first he trusts in the mother's breast, and when his perception grows stronger, and I guess that means develops a sense of self, he transfers his trust to his mother because of the attention she lavishes on him, as it says, surely, this is again from Tehillim, surely I have stilled and quieted my soul like a weaned child with his mother. My soul is with me like a weaned child, right? So the child is weaned from the mother, but understands that love and affection and all those things are still coming from the mother. So that's a kind of second level of trust. So first is I trust the breast. Second is I trust my mother. When his intellect matures further and he recognizes his mother's conduct is dependent on his father, he transfers his trust to him because of the deep security he affords him. This is okay. I'm not sure about this one. It's an interesting idea. Okay, I'm not sure what this says about Jewish society in Andalusia, but it's an interesting idea. And when his body matures and he becomes adept at supporting himself through labor or trade and the like, he transfers his trust to his own strength and skill because of his ignorance of all that proceeded of God's benevolent governance. So eventually, right? So he says, so eventually the person becomes grows into this sense of independence, this sense that I'm in control of my world. And it's interesting because he says, this is, I think one of the things that's, I think, nice about this is that he seems to imply that this problem we have of kind of not paying attention to God's governance of the world is a natural part of our individuation as human beings. Right? Part of our becoming human beings is we separate from our mother. And here he says you're kind of attached to your father, but eventually you come to the point where you say, no, I'm in control of my own world, and that's a natural part of individuation. But it also becomes now a spiritual obstacle, because once I say I'm in control of my own world, then I stop seeing the providence of God. So he says the story is told of one of the pious whose neighbor, a skilled scribe, supported himself what he earned in the practice of his art. So he was, I guess, somebody who wrote, in the, of course, before printing, for Jews, there are certain kinds of texts which have to be handwritten in order to be used for ritual purposes. Torah scrolls and the mezuzahs that we put on our doors, and the tefillin that we tie on our heads and arms when we pray. Those all have to be handwritten, but also in the old days, even books were handwritten. So there were people who were professional writers. Even today, if you go to South Asia, you'll see outside the post office, there are professional writers, people who will write letters for you, because a lot of people are illiterate. So they sit there with these old typewriters and they type letters for people. So, okay, so there was an old scribe, and one day the pious man asked his neighbor, "How are you faring?" "Fine," he said, "so long as my arm is sound." That very evening, he shattered his arm, and he could not write with it for the rest of his life. It was divine retribution for having placed his trust in his arm. Okay, that's a tough story, right? That's a tough story. So he got punished for saying, as long as my, and he should have said, Baruch Hashem, fine, right? He should have said, thank God, fine. Okay, he should have said, yes, thanks to God, fine. Instead, he said, thanks to my arm, everything is okay. And he got punished by, so of course, maybe we never know, because maybe he went on to do something else with his life. Maybe he learned to write with his left hand. Maybe he who knows, maybe he found a great fortune. We don't know what happened to him. But shouldn't be trusting in our shouldn't be trusting in these intermediate means, but understand that that our livelihood and all of the good comes from Hashem. And it's now 1:44, and I'll stop there. And questions, thoughts, objections? I'm actually going to mark where I left off.
I had another metaphor.
Okay.
Sometimes when I would run short of money near the end of the month, and I would be going through Stuart's change drawer, and I was trying to put one of the other of the kids would try to give me her money.
Oh.
Was this money she had? It was her allowance that I had given her.
Yes.
Right. So it's the same. It's again the same thing. Where whatever it is that we're giving, right? Well, my Hebrew school teacher used to say that when you're giving tzedakah, you're giving money that God gave you.
Right. Correct. Right. I love that story of giving you their allowance. Right. Yes, it came from you, but okay. Yeah. More thoughts? I left everybody stunned today. Stunned. Okay. Well, I wish everybody a beautiful day. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. L'chaim, this is orange soda. No. I know it's bad for you, but what can I say? And I hope everybody has a beautiful week. If I don't see you till next week, if I see you next Monday, it's very good. If anybody has any thoughts, questions, challenges, poems, pictures, anything, please feel free to feel free to contact me and let me know. Okay, bye.
Have a good week.